As a young black man, I feel that I have an obligation to my race of people. Not to no other race or no other nationality, just to black people.
Oh, shit, say that. Oh, welcome to the Mac, bitch. Welcome to the Mac, bitch. Welcome to the Mac, bitch. No. Welcome to the Mac, bitch. Welcome to the Mac, bitch. Welcome to the Mac.
Umbrella. She's up. Whole nother level of shit you can't even understand.
What is good, my people? We are live back again with another episode of The Forecast. Now, we have to understand how important our history is, especially our history in America. And this same history has been repeating itself for hundreds of years. And if we don't start understanding our own history, teaching ourselves our own history, because they'll never teach us the truth about our own history, then we will continue to make the same mistakes over and over and over. Now, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Our ancestors already left us the blueprint. But what we have to do is learn how to put aside our tribal differences, to stop fighting each other over our beliefs. Now, other cultures, they have disagreements, they have fights, but they learn how to put aside their differences when it comes to us. The dominant society learned how to stay on code with whiteness. And we have to learn how to stay on code with ourselves. Now, all the institutions that we say we need to build, we have built time and time again. But what we have to do is learn how to protect it. Sometimes they come in a covert way. Sometimes they come in an overt way. But they will come. And we have tried just about every single way of defending ourselves and trying to get ourselves out of this position. And even though they try to keep it away from us, we have fought back every step of the way. But at the end of the day, power and dominance only respects one thing, equal or greater power. We just have to realize the power that we already possess. And our power comes from a lot more than just turning our other cheek. Now, some people try to make the argument that racism is and has historically been a Southern thing, but it's not. It's not even just an American thing. Racism is a part of European culture, and it's a culture that can't be changed and needs to be destroyed. Back in 1966 in Chicago, Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders tried to organize a movement known as the Chicago Open Housing Movement to challenge racial discrimination in the city. Now, even though Martin Luther King preached nonviolence, and today they try to push a Martin Luther King talking point down our throats, back in 1966, they treated him no different from Huey Newton. For 3 days, Martin Luther King tried to lead a nonviolent protest, but every day he was met by white resistance. They were throwing rocks at him, bottles, spitting on him, doing everything they can to keep him in their place. Even Martin Luther King got hit in the head with a rock during the marches. And during an interview, he said, "I've been in many protests all over the South, but he has never seen, even in Mississippi and Alabama, mobs of white people as hostile and hate-filled as he's seen in Chicago." And many people started questioning the nonviolent method. But Martin Luther King said he was going to keep going anyway. But in the middle of the movement, violence broke out after the Westside riots of 1966 started. Now, this riot started on a hot day when the police came to the black community and cut off all the fire hydrants, which people were using to stay cool. Now, many of the black residents got mad because the police only came to their neighborhood to cut off the fire hydrants. They didn't bother with the Italian neighborhood right next to them. They let them keep their fire hydrant on. So when the police shut down one fire hydrant, somebody else went and opened another one. That's when a young brother, William Young, tried to open the fire hydrant and he was chased by 2 cops. And he started shouting, "They're trying to kill me." So when the police grabbed him, a crowd of about 200 surrounded him and demanded the police let him go. And more cops had to come in and save those 2 cops and pull them out the crowd. But then some people started throwing rocks at the police. Now, the first night, everything was still relatively minor. Some people was just smashing windows and throwing rocks, but it was no major violence. The next day, the Chicago mayor called it a juvenile incident. But then later that day, the police came around and did the exact same thing. They came only to the black neighborhood and shut down the fire hydrants, which pissed off the black community. A crowd of about 200 young black people started fighting back with the police. Then they started looting stores, and the mayor called in about 400 cops. And then the police started arresting every black person that didn't go home. So in response, the black community, already fed up, started throwing bricks, bottles, and rocks at the police. Some people even threw Molotov cocktails and started setting fires. The police tried to march the streets to restore order, but some black people were sniping them from rooftops. And that night, it was so many shootouts between the black community and the police. On the second night alone, at least 20 people were arrested and so many people were injured. The newspapers called it a battle between Negroes and the police. And then the Chicago mayor tried to blame the rioting on Martin Luther King, because somehow it's always our fault for responding to the violence against us. Even a few times they acknowledge that they're wrong, we are still to blame because we shouldn't want to defend ourselves. And in response, Martin Luther King said that was dishonest. And those who make a peaceful revolution impossible will make a violent revolution inevitable. And then the third night of the riot was the most violent. And some people say there was more shooting on the streets than the Vietnam battlefield. About 100 cops got into a shootout with a group of protesters that was inside of an all-black apartment building. Now, most of the people who got in the shootout with the police managed to escape, but that night alone, close to 118 people were arrested. The crowd looted and burned down white-owned businesses because these businesses discriminated against them. They wouldn't hire them, and they charged them higher prices than they charged other people. So they destroyed the white businesses in their community. Some people threw Molotov cocktails. Now, the point was to replace their businesses with your own, like they did to us. They burnt our businesses down and put theirs in instead. We should have found a way to not let anybody else build their businesses in our communities. But by the end, hundreds of people were arrested and many people were shot, including 6 cops. The police claim a mysterious paramilitary group of Negroes were planning to start guerrilla warfare and had automatic weapons and explosives stashed throughout the city. And they arrested 21 members of this alleged group that they never even proved was real. But the Chicago Transit Authority had to shut down the trains because snipers were on rooftops shooting at random targets. The governor ended up sending in 1,500 National Guards to patrol a 140 block area in the Westside of Chicago. And after it was over, at least 13 people were charged with treason, because fighting for your own life or the life of your family or your community is treasonous to America for a black person, because the system in America has been created to destroy black people. So to go against that is treasonous. And somehow when they shed our blood, like they've been doing for hundreds of years, it's not treasonous. In fact, it's justified, no matter what we do. Because you don't have to commit an actual crime. Being black itself is the crime. In Aurora, Colorado, a young 23-year-old brother, Elijah Mcclain, died in police custody. Now let's try to find out exactly what happened to this brother, Elijah Mcclain.
Tonight, a community in Aurora is calling for 3 police officers to be charged with murder, as after a man died after police putting him in 2 chokeholds. Elijah Mcclain walked home with groceries when someone reported him as suspicious because he was wearing a ski mask. Dylan Thomas covering the story for us in Aurora tonight. Dylan, the family says they watched the video of this arrest.
Karen, they described it as both heartbreaking and cruel. Aurora police made them agree not to release or record any of that video when they had the opportunity to review it. They say they believe what they saw proved their son was murdered.
He was a happy young man. He was always energetic.
Described as loving and unique.
Elijah Mcclain is a man who was never once arrested in his entire life.
23-year-old Elijah Mcclain's family now has to speak for him. In August, Mcclain was walking home from the store with groceries wearing a ski mask, which his family says was not unusual. A passerby called 911 saying Mcclain was acting odd.
Elijah Mcclain had no weapon, and that's what the 911 caller said.
Moments later, Aurora police contacted him.
They slammed him up against the wall, they tackled him to the ground, and they continued to terrorize and torture him.
Body cameras on 3 different officers dislodged, leaving only audio of the struggle.
And we hear him begging, we hear him identifying himself, we hear him saying, "I've got my ID, please stop, you're hurting me, I can't breathe."
Aurora police issued a statement saying Mcclain initially resisted arrest, something the family disputes. Police would not release video to the public at this time, but did let the family watch.
It was difficult. It was very hard to see how everybody reacted inhumane. It was like there was no real compassion or concern in the room.
Leading Elijah's parents to call for an independent investigation.
You will be held accountable for what you've done.
We do not think it fair for those who murder with the badge to continue to hide behind those committed to honoring the badge.
Now, we should note that the chokehold tactic used in this situation has been banned by many local agencies here in Colorado, but not in Aurora. Aurora police say they will not release the video until the investigation is complete.
The family says their cousin is brain dead, and the cops' story just isn't adding up. They believe that police officers beat him that night. We asked Aurora PD about these allegations. The department says they don't have anything to say at this time. Questions tonight over how Elijah Mcclain ended up in this hospital bed.
He has swelling in his face. He has swelling in his arms. He's unresponsive.
Police say this all happened Saturday night on Billings Street near East Colfax Avenue, just east of Highway 225. A call came in about a suspicious person wearing a ski mask, waving his arms. Police say when they got there, they made contact with the suspect. He resisted, they struggled, and then took him into custody. That's when police say they called Aurora Fire for medical attention because of, quote, the level of physical force and his agitated state. Aurora Fire says they gave him a standard medication used to reduce agitation. While he was being transported to the hospital, he had a heart attack. Tonight, Elijah's family is demanding to know how the 24-year-old went from an athletic, energetic guy to this.
He's been beaten. It's not he had a heart attack. He was beaten. You don't just have a heart attack and then you have all these bruises in your head.
Now, this brother Elijah Mcclain never did anything wrong. He never broke any laws. The only thing he did was go buy something from the store. Now, this brother went into the store with a ski mask on, and the store employee didn't even call the police. This brother paid for his stuff and left. So then this random Hispanic dude, who probably would fit the description if somebody calls the police on him, called 911 and said this brother Elijah Mcclain looked suspicious. He said he had on a ski mask and was waving his arms in the air. Now, this brother was simply walking down the street listening to music, and witnesses even saw him put his headphones in. And this brother may have been a little eccentric. And of course, like everything else, being a little bit weird is a capital crime in America when you're black. So when the police saw him, they claim he didn't stop, but probably because this brother was listening to the music and didn't hear him. But the police automatically said he was resisting arrest. Now, the reason this brother had on a ski mask is because he's anemic and he gets cold really easily, which is the purpose of a ski mask. But when you have on a ski mask, then you really fit the description, even though we still fit the description without a ski mask. But then when the police started talking to him, all he said was, I have the right to go wherever I want to go. So then when the police started touching him, he said, I'm an introvert and please don't touch me. Because some people don't like strangers touching them, especially when they're grabbing them for no reason. All this brother said was, please respect my boundaries. Eventually, the three cops, Nathan Woodyard, Jason Rosenblatt, and Randy Rodema, threw this brother on the ground. And one of them even tried to claim this brother was reaching for his gun, even though they were all holding him down. And the whole time this brother Elijah Mcclain was screaming in pain and saying, I don't have a gun. I don't do that kind of thing. Trying to tell him he's not a criminal. And that's when the cop Nathan Woodyard got on top of this brother's back and started using a chokehold, while the other cops started handcuffing him. Now, while they were on top of him, choking him and beating him, this brother started throwing up several times, but they never stopped beating him. And while the police were doing all this, somehow their body cameras magically fell off and wasn't able to fully record it, even though it still got their audio. At one point, one of the cops told the other one to stop pointing his body camera at him so that he wouldn't be seen on video. And then after all that, one of the cops still threatened to bring in a dog because this brother wasn't being still enough for him, even though this brother was throwing up. And then when the paramedics were called in, they ended up injecting this brother with some kind of drug they claimed was to calm him down. And then after they injected him, this brother Elijah Mcclain ended up having multiple heart attacks and died a few hours later after being declared brain dead.
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
So there's a guy. He's walking the what's the opposite of north?
South.
South, yeah. He's walking south on Billings Street, and he has a mask on.
Okay.
And then when I pass by him, he puts his hands up and does all these kinds of signs. I don't know. He looks sketchy. He might be a good person or a bad person.
Yeah.
But he has a full-on mask on.
Okay. His arms. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to put a call in so officers can go see what's going on, okay? Are you still at that location now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. When did this happen? When did you see him?
Right now, he's like, I just turned around and he's like putting his hands up.
Okay. Don't approach him, okay? If you need to, just drive away. I don't want you to go near him. Were any weapons involved or mentioned?
No.
Okay. I already have a call in. Okay, I need to get his full description. What race is he?
I think he's a black male.
Okay. How old does he look? I know he's wearing a mask.
I have no clue.
Okay. What color is the mask, or what does it look like?
Black.
Black mask?
He's like a gas station on Billing Street on Colfax now.
Okay. Is it like a ski mask, or what type of mask is it?
Yeah, like a ski mask.
Moments before Aurora police scuffled with a man wearing a ski mask. He's now in the hospital on life support. Investigative reporter Lori Jane Gliha live in Aurora with the video you see only here on Fox 31. Lori Jane.
Yeah, this is footage of Elijah Mcclain at the Shell gas station not long before his encounter with police and medical personnel over the weekend. And now his family is telling us he suffered another medical setback here at the hospital, and they say he's brain dead.
It's like, you can't imagine Elijah not there anymore.
Naomi Mcclain is trying to make peace with the fact that things will never be the same without her brother Elijah.
We got a call from the hospital saying Elijah had another heart attack. According to them, Elijah's been dead since Saturday.
The problem solvers have been asking tough questions since Elijah's struggle with Aurora police over the weekend landed him in the hospital. Medical crews administered a drug to calm him down after the scuffle. His heart later stopped.
He was this jumping ball of energy, always there, always uplifting you, giving you gratitude, respect all the time. His motto was always with gratitude.
The problem solvers obtained this surveillance video showing Elijah wearing a black ski mask the same night someone called police to say he seemed suspicious.
That's his dress down look. That's his I'm gonna go running at night, I'm gonna go to the store really quick kind of look.
His family says it was normal attire for the 23-year-old who often got cold when he would run. And the store clerk told us the mask didn't make her uncomfortable. She had seen it before.
I wasn't nervous because I knew who he was. And when he came in, he wasn't threatening. You know, most people that come in with ski masks are going to be threatening. He was not threatening at all. He was telling everybody hello. He asked everybody how their day was, and he said goodbye.
The clerk says another customer told Elijah he looked, quote, suspect. But she says Elijah laughed. And at the end of the video, he appears to give a little bow to the man behind him in line.
It's his gratitude bow. He does that all the time. When he's talking to somebody, he'll be like, with gratitude, and then he'll bow to him.
His sister Naomi Mcclain says Elijah was a peaceful man, and now she has so many new questions about how he ended up in such a rough situation.
If he hadn't worn that mask, I think he could have lived, yeah. Definitely.
Well, family members say that Elijah was a gentle soul, that he wasn't a loud person who went around banging on doors, that he went and bought stuff for people. Tonight, they set up all these candles and solar lights to honor his memory.
It should not have escalated from a suspicious call to my son dying.
LaWayne Mosley says he wants answers about why police forcefully confronted his son, Elijah Mcclain. In a news release, police say they received a call about a suspicious man wearing a ski mask, waving his arms. When they ordered him to stop, he kept walking.
I know he was listening to music, and so does the clerk. The clerk said he put his headphones in after the conversation he had.
Elijah's sister says he may not have heard police. She also says he wore the ski mask to keep warm and was wearing it when he went into the store and purchased tea. Police say he resisted and fought back when they made contact, so they called for paramedics who administered medication to calm him down. A short while later, he went into cardiac arrest and then died.
I'm shocked, to be honest with you. I'm totally shocked because I love Aurora and I respect everybody doing their job. You know, I respect the police. I respect the people that were there that night, or I did before this happened. You know what I'm saying? It's like I don't know who to trust anymore.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out to remember Elijah's life.
On Saturday night, family members gathered to honor the young man who they say had a sweet soul, gave generously to other people, and loved music. They question why anyone would administer drugs without knowing what someone's reaction would be.
Did he have any other medication or any other stuff in his system?
No, he doesn't drink, he doesn't take drugs, he doesn't do anything like that. He likes hanging out, he likes being aware of his body, what's in it.
Police told our partners at the Post There were no allegations that Elijah had done anything criminal.
I would like to see the body count soon, hopefully, so that we can know how it started and why it escalated that far.
Family members want to know why police used so much force on and medicated a young man who apparently just looked suspicious to someone and who apparently hadn't committed any crime.
Now, they injected a drug into this young brother without permission that people have to sign a waiver before they give it to them. But they decided on their own it'll be okay. Not caring how it would affect him or if he was allergic to it, they just shot this brother in the neck with some kind of drug. They didn't know this brother's medical history. They didn't know if he was already on medication or anything. And this brother hadn't even committed a crime or even been accused of committing a crime. He had only been accused of looking suspicious. And he was only suspicious because he had a ski mask on, because the brother gets cold, because he's anemic. And now these cops get their paid vacation. And then after the autopsy didn't say any specific cause of death, all the cops were cleared of any wrongdoing.
His death in police custody has sparked protests and calls for an investigation. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jacqueline Allen.
And I'm Tom Mustang. Glad you're with us tonight. A new autopsy report is shedding some light on the death of a man police say they were trying to restrain.
Denver 7's Lance Hernandez has that report, and Lance, still a lot of questions.
That report says Elijah Mcclain's death could have been accidental, natural, or homicide. A pathologist couldn't make a determination. Now, there were abrasions on his face, back, and legs, and hemorrhaging around his neck, but no determination as to whether a carotid hold contributed to the young man's death.
This report says 23-year-old Elijah Mcclain died of undetermined causes after police confronted him while he was walking home from a convenience store. A caller told police the man looked suspicious, that he was wearing a ski mask and waving his arms.
Do police have a right to stop somebody who looks suspicious to somebody?
You know, the police certainly could have stopped him and said, "Hey, sir, what are you up to?"
Attorney Mari Newman says if police had done that, Mcclain would still be alive. The coroner's report states the decedent was violently struggling with officers who were attempting to restrain him. Most likely, the decedent's physical exertion contributed to death. It's unclear if the officers' actions contributed as well. The report also says it's unclear whether Mcclain aspirated vomit while restrained. We know that first responders administered a ketamine injection and that Mcclain later suffered a heart attack.
There's absolutely no evidence that Elijah ever resisted.
The officers involved were wearing cameras, but somehow those cameras became dislodged. Police haven't released the video yet, but Newman has seen it.
One of the really troubling things about the video is that at some point, one of the officers lifts up the body camera of one of his colleagues, and the other officer says, "Hey, get that away, move that out of the way, dude."
She sees that as tampering with evidence.
We reached out to Aurora Police for comment. A spokesman suggested we contact the coroner. He also said the case is still active and that once it's completed, it will be presented to the district attorney's office for review.
Newly released body camera video from Aurora Police is giving us new insight into the moments before Elijah Mcclain's August death.
Now, someone called police to report Mcclain as a suspicious man wearing a ski mask and waving his hands. The 23-year-old was walking home from a convenience store. His family said he wore the ski mask because he was anemic and was often cold.
Police stopped him while he was walking. They say he was resisting arrest, so they put him in a carotid control hold and he passed out. And then when paramedics arrived on scene, they chose to administer the sedative ketamine, something Aurora Fire says is standard protocol around our region.
Stop. Stop. I have a right to stop you because you're being suspicious.
What's your deal? No, you don't need to be sensitive. Grab your gun, dude. Stop, dude.
All right. Just drive it right behind his ear if he fights, all right?
Now, Aurora Police insist they are not the ones who requested the use of ketamine. It was Aurora paramedics. Mcclain went into cardiac arrest on his way to the hospital. He died 6 days later.
And according to an autopsy, the coroner could not determine how Mcclain died and wouldn't rule out homicide at the hands of Aurora PD, but added it may have been physical exertion. The the attorney representing the Mcclain family says they were not aware of tonight's press conference and calls this surprise Friday night press conference another example of Aurora doing its best to keep Elijah's family and the community in the dark. Aurora police say the officers were put on leave and they are back on the job. The department is still looking into use of force in this case.
So their coroners say they didn't know the cause of death. But the reason he's dead is because he came in contact with the police in the first place. The police are the cause of death. And they even tried to say physical exertion may have led to his death. But that's because he was getting beat up. And I'm pretty sure injecting him with some kind of drug without knowing its effects has something to do with his death. But all they can say is undetermined. And the police did everything they could from releasing the body camera footage, claiming that it fell off and it wouldn't really help anything. But anytime it just doesn't incriminate the police, they don't have any problem releasing the video. But instead, they blame his own death on him. And everybody trying to pass the blame on injecting the drug into his neck while he was already on the ground, not even moving. And of course, no one was fired. These cops got their paid vacation, and everybody is right back on their job doing what they were doing. And here is another young black male killed because they look suspicious for walking home from the store from buying something to drink. But this will continue as long as we allow it to continue, until we understand that we are all we got and we don't have any other choice. We shouldn't be afraid of doing something. We should be afraid of not doing something because they're already spilling our blood. And until we get on code, they're going to continue to do so. And at the end of the day, we are all we got. And until we stop it, then it's not going to stop.
A day later, the movement's plans were interrupted. The oppressive July heat had fueled growing tension in the city. When officials closed fire hydrants in a black neighborhood, tempers flared. Leaders of the freedom movement mobilized quickly. The future of their nonviolent campaign was at stake.
Dr. King and I and Andy drove around trying to persuade particularly young black people that they were, one, not helping the problem. We understood their frustration. We were trying to address it and find avenues for that energy and frustration and anger to be challenged in a constructive way, and that the most dangerous situation was that the police would overreact and they would in fact be physically hurt or damaged or end up in jail.
The battle on the streets continued for 4 days. 2 people were killed. But Chicago was spared the devastation that had hit Watts a year earlier. Some credited King and the freedom movement. Mayor Daley felt otherwise.
The mayor did feel that there was no need for outsiders to stir up the troops in Chicago, and therefore I think his natural inclination was to say, well, we have never had these things before, now they're happening. What's the explanation? It must be these events and these people and the way they're doing things that was responsible for the rioting that took place.
We are trying to conduct a nonviolent movement here in Chicago, and we are going on with that program, but we need support. And there's no point in the power structure and anybody else saying that because we are peacefully going around trying to change conditions that we are the cause of the riots. That's dishonest. It is untrue. It is unfair to say it to the public, because we have stood up for nonviolence with all of our hearts. And those who will make this peaceful revolution impossible will make a violent revolution inevitable. And we've got to get this over. I need help. I need some victories. I need some concessions to take back.
Launch a series of marches into all-white suburbs. By moving north and by concerning itself with equality in housing and employment, the civil rights movement began to encounter increased resistance, the so-called white backlash. During these marches, King and other demonstrators were struck by bricks and bottles.
Oh, I've been hit so many times, I'm immune to it.
How do you feel about this reception?
Well, this is a terrible thing. I've been in many demonstrations all across the South, but I can say that I have never seen, even in Mississippi and Alabama, mobs as hostile and as hate-filled as I've seen here in Chicago.
Caught on a police body camera, an Aurora officer uses a horribly racist slur. The police chief fires him, but tonight that officer is back on the job. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ann Trujillo.
And I'm Shannon Ogden. Chief Nick Metz is condemning the comments and talking with Denver 7 because he says he owes the community an explanation.
Now, before you watch this story, we want to warn you that what you're about to hear is very offensive, but it's exactly what was said. And here is Liz Gilardi with the video and the chief's response.
I reviewed the video. To say I was shocked was an understatement.
We got a cop with him.
Body camera video shows two Aurora police officers as they responded to a pursuit and officer-involved shooting.
The suspect's car pinned between two vehicles.
Warning, what you're about to hear is a highly offensive conversation between them.
We got the Alabama porch monkeys all contained.
Then the camera goes dark.
Number one, they have a absolute right to be outraged.
Aurora Police Chief Nick Metz is sitting down with us to explain what he did next when he found out about the video. He took the officer, Lieutenant Charles DeShazer, off the street, and after an internal investigation, the chief fired him. Now he's back on the job.
I respect their decision. But doesn't mean I have to agree with it.
The officer made an appeal to get his job back. The city's Civil Service Commission reviewed the case, reinstated, and demoted him to a sergeant.
And many are not happy about the decision of his return because they also recognize that basically he's made their job harder.
The actions of this officer.
The mayor of Aurora is backing the chief tonight and says the decision to fire the officer was the right one.
I wholly support Chief Metz's decision.
The Aurora chapter of the NAACP says the statement made in that body camera footage erodes trust.
In regards to him being reinstated, I'm not happy with that. Because if this person is out there patrolling, and if his first thought was to see a group of people and say, porch monkey, what is he going to do when he has to stop someone?
The officer is back at work, but he will not be in a supervisor role or have any interactions with the public. Still, the chief says how officers behave on and off camera can ruin credibility.
I think the damage that's been done to the department, the damage that's been done to the relation that will likely happen between the department and the community is huge.
It's so weird. You've never seen natural black hair. No, it's just so it grows like this.
Oh no.
This is our military. Didn't you take a picture of me? You do not have the right to take a picture of me. I do. Do not take a picture of me. Hey. I'm pregnant. Have them hands off me. Ma'am. Put that phone down. Oh, shit. Ma'am.
Oh, no, don't do it.
First of all, I'm pregnant. Look at me. I'm pregnant. You're pushing the pregnant lady. Well, my husband is handicapped.
Hey, you don't need to be recorded.
Big mouth. Fuck you. And make that nigger do her job. You're a fat ass nigger. And you get these up. You're a fat ass. You're a fat ass nigger. You discriminated against stuff. And she was told, you were told to wait on us. And you won't feel it.
Bro, that motherfucker said that 3 times. I literally feel my heart race. Someone stop me. Please, somebody stop me.
No one's stopping that.
My heart is racing.
I have it all video recorded. And you know what? I'm calling charges of discriminating. Oh, hey! Now you go mind your business or you go outside.
The report confirms what we said. It's really sad it's taken this long for us to get to this point.
For 3 years, John and Julie Cochran of Hampton say they brought concerns to school administrators that their young daughter was being racially bullied, but it did not stop. Now, an independent administrative review finds that racial bullying did occur and that procedures and communication with parents was lacking.
It brings validation that we called to light something that was affecting our child's safety in a school environment.
We know that those events created an environment that we don't like, quite frankly. We don't tolerate it, but it did come into our schools.
The report was commissioned by the district.
It was really important for us to understand the process, what happened in terms of our responses, our administrative responses to the allegations of racial bullying.
Among its recommendations, a more racially diverse faculty, expanding sensitivity and diversity training, bullying reporting forms, and working with principals on communication. Meantime, the Cochrans say their daughter is thriving at a new school.
We're in a position we want to prevent other children from going through the same situation. As a family, we need to make sure that we see this through in terms of understanding that we need some recourse here.
The Cochrans and the district are also awaiting the results of an investigation by the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights.
There was outrage over this photo showing a McDonald's coffee cup with a vulgar anti-police message, "Blank and Pig." A 23-year-old rookie police officer claimed he went to the drive-thru at this McDonald's in Junction City, Kansas, and got more than a cup of Joe. The picture went viral when the police chief posted it to Facebook. But it's now come to light that the entire incident was a hoax. The rookie is admitting he wrote the note himself, and the police chief is both embarrassed and really upset.
This was completely and solely fabricated by a Harrington police officer who is no longer employed with our agency.
The hoax began to unravel after the McDonald's franchise owner reviewed surveillance footage from every angle at the restaurant and found no evidence that one of his employees had written the vulgar message.
It was then that the rookie admitted he made up the story.
I hope he understands the magnitude of the black eye that this gives the law enforcement profession from coast to coast.
What is that? That's a nice doll. That's a lovely doll. Look at those blood.
Knock your ass out.
Take that fake fucking diamond out your mouth and get some real.
Step your game up, white trash. You want some unclean ass crackhead hoe?
Get the fuck
Step your game up.
I didn't even
call the police. They don't give a fuck, hoe.
I ain't calling no police, bitch.
Call the police. Weak ass bitch.
Dude, I'm gonna fucking call the police.
I know you
After
are.
you would call the police.
I'll beat your motherfucking ass.
You do not know where I'm
Talking
coming
about,
from.
are you serious? 75 cent white trash? You ain't got 75 cent. Broke ass hoe.
Bitch,
I don't give a fuck about that bitch word.
Shut the fuck up.
You ain't talking about shit. I don't give a fuck about that. I don't give a fuck about that. Drunk ass hoe. You just better.
I'm not drunk, bro. I didn't even fucking.
Don't never touch me,
You
hoe.
fucking touch me, bro. I will.
You don't never touch me, hoe. I'm not playing with you.
You fucking.
Let me get this. Let me get this so I can go. I'm not playing with you, hoe. I'm not playing
Do
with
not
you.
fucking touch me, bro. Do not fucking touch me, bro.
Don't never touch me, hoe.
You mean to tell me I just did all that work?
You didn't work but 3 hours.
Right. I just did all that work, and how much you gonna give me? $10?
Yeah.
$10?
Well, what's wrong with you?
$10?
Get out.
I'm about to slap the shit out of you. $10? $10? Bitch ass nigga. Fuck ass nigga. Fuck ass nigga. Puss ass nigga.